comes as a new strain of COVID-19 is spreading in the UK. Aisha Husni is live in New York City with more on this. Aisha.
Hey, Molly. So right now, there are no confirmed cases of that new UK strain here in the New York area, but the governor, the mayor are on high alert, and it has a lot to do with this. Take a look at the number of flights coming in from London just today into the New York area, 9 flights today, and they have the potential to carry thousands of travelers. 3 airlines are now requiring passengers from England to show a negative COVID test before they depart. A 4th, United, joins them next week for flights arriving to New Jersey's Newark Airport. But that's not all. As you said, Mayor Bill de Blasio is stepping up quarantine enforcement now. Anyone traveling to the state must continue to fill out those contact tracing forms. Only now, travelers will also be served a quarantine order by certified mail, and folks that are coming from the UK specifically will get an unannounced knock on the door by a sheriff's deputy at their home, their hotel, to confirm that they are in fact in quarantine. Anyone who fails to comply with this faces a hefty fine.
We cannot take chances with anyone who travels, particularly folks traveling in from the UK. So to everyone, look, if you don't comply with the quarantine, that's a $1,000 fine to begin, day one. If you continue not to comply with the quarantine, it is $1,000 for each additional day.
And Molly, those deputies are keeping very busy. As you'll remember, those checkpoints are still in place all around the city. As people come into the city, they'll be randomly pulled over and reminded about those quarantine rules. Molly?
Aisha, rather remarkable, and I love the holiday attire. Thank you. And New York City's mayor is also catching some unwanted attention after he revealed what his biggest takeaway from the pandemic is, plus this.
Could we allow fans to the game with testing and then contact trace after the game?
New York's governor has a plan to get fans at NFL games. However, not everyone is cheering this. Why some say Cuomo's priorities are backward yet again. Power Panel slides in.
I've learned that this is something Charlene used to lecture me on all the time, that sleep really matters. And I've not been someone who's traditionally gotten enough sleep. And the beginning of this crisis, it was crazy for all of us. I mean, we were working every single day, very long hours. No one was getting enough sleep. And I really saw that that had an impact. I mean, it makes it harder to fully think through things. And obviously, we all get more emotional when we're tired. So I learned the value of sleep for sure.
Mayor Bill de Blasio getting roasted for saying the biggest lesson from a pandemic that's killed more than 24,000 New Yorkers was the value of getting enough sleep. Today's New York Post cover mocking the mayor's admission. But de Blasio's office later defended his remarks, saying after such a hellish year, all New Yorkers deserve to get some more sleep. We have our Power Panel, former Ohio Congressman Jim Renacci and Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov. Thank you both for being here in this holiday week. Really appreciate it. I want to start with you.
Thanks, Molly.
Jim, what do you think? Does the mayor deserve to be roasted on this? He's gotten roasted on quite a lot of things lately, but what about this one?
Well, absolutely. Look, it was a mistake. He shouldn't be talking about sleep during a pandemic. He should be talking about the businesses that have been lost in New York City. He should be talking about the deaths that have occurred, and he should be talking about those type of things. Look, I realize in politics sometimes you say things you don't mean to say. Hopefully this was one of them, but looking at his history and looking at how he comes in late and how he sleeps in and how he misses meetings, it appears sleep is a quality that he likes, but too many people are losing sleep trying to make sure they can pay their bills, make sure they can pay their rent, pay their mortgage, pay their car payments. I'm talking to people every day that wish they had more time during the day just so they can make up the difference they're losing because of either lost job, lost income, and really lost opportunities.
Yeah, I don't live in New York City, so I didn't know that the mayor had this nap-happy reputation for showing up late to things. But at any rate, Jessica, what do you think? Do you defend him, or do you think this was a bad answer to a pretty soft question?
It was obviously a bad answer to a pretty soft question, and I don't know why they doubled down on it. It was insensitive, and I think the former congressman is correct in that respect. But I can't find the outrage within myself to be mad about what de Blasio is saying when Donald Trump is on a golf course today. He blew up the COVID stimulus package, the relief package yesterday, said he wanted $2,000 stimulus checks, then boarded his plane to head to Mar-a-Lago to his private club so that he could play golf through the holidays. Now, is that insensitive? Is that tone deaf? I think so. And let's talk about congressional Republicans who now won't acquiesce to the $2,000 stimulus checks, which we all know the American public needs, and they've already been vaccinated and never missed a paycheck. So let's talk about how tone deaf that is. Let's talk about how insensitive that is.
Well,
sleep is so low on my priority list.
Well, but, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were vaccinated. And so, things kind of go back and forth there. And hopefully we'll get to something next week. Maybe lawmakers in Washington will get some of the work done that's so desperately needed for people all across America. Those folks that are standing in food lines would like to know how, if they're getting a check, when they're getting it, and how much it'll be for. But shifting back to this, some New York lawmakers throwing a penalty flag on Governor Andrew Cuomo's plan, this is a new one too, to allow fans at NFL games, which the governor detailed just yesterday. Take a listen.
The Buffalo Bills proposed 6,700 fans. Department of Health is working on a model where you would test the fans before they go in. If they're negative, they go in, and then contact trace afterwards.
Jim, heading back to you, former congressman, your thoughts on this? This was considered truly speechless by one of the state lawmakers who said, Senator Sue Serino said, I've received countless calls from family members desperate to see their loved ones in nursing homes who couldn't find timely access to rapid tests and who haven't been able to get timely results back for employees. Once again, New York has its priorities backwards. What do you think about this idea, testing NFL games, making all of that happen when there are some other things that some people would like to see happening instead?
Well, look, I agree. And some of this stuff isn't Republican or Democrat. This is just basic common sense. People want to see their moms. They want to see their family members in nursing homes. They can't get testing. In Ohio, it's very difficult to get testing. In Pennsylvania, it's very difficult to get testing. We should be prioritizing testing just like we should be prioritizing, in many ways, who gets the vaccination. I mean, should members, Republicans and Democrats, again, this isn't a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an issue about how do you prioritize, how do you make sure people are safe, and at the same time, people are going to a football game, they're going to know what that, look, I was a season ticket holder. I gave up my seats because I did not want to be part of that issue, and people who want to go should be able to go, but we need to be able to prioritize these things. And to the stimulus bill, I do want to touch on that. Look, I was in Washington for 8 years. The biggest thing you want to do around Christmas time, the leadership, they want to get everybody out of town.
Yeah,
and
but
that's
they
the
tend
problem.
to be there the weekend before Christmas every time.
With a whole bunch of spending that wasn't even related to, clearly wasn't even related to the virus when you're giving money out to other countries. So we got to be careful. This isn't Republican and Democrat issues. These are spending issues, and people back home need the money. At the same time, why are we giving it to other countries? That's really the issue.
Jessica, you brought up that topic, so I guess that was Jim's response as we go forward. But your thoughts on Governor Cuomo's idea, testing before you head to a big football game and contact tracing potentially afterwards if there end up being cases. Seems like a fairly big challenge. Your thoughts on that endeavor?
Yeah, I'm not really concerned with people being able to get to a football game. As the congressman said, I'm concerned about people being able to see their parents, being able to see people who are especially in long-term care facilities and nursing homes who have been isolated, coming up on 10 months. And we don't have a great rollout of the vaccine at this point, so testing should go to those who need it most. I am desperate to get to a sporting event. Kevin Durant has not disappointed since he arrived in Brooklyn, and I would love to be there at the Barclays Center, but I know the time will come for that when everyone can be safe. And to the point about this being a bipartisan issue, the foreign aid was requested by the administration. They just forgot that they did that. They also asked for the Kennedy Center dollars. They tied this to a government funding bill when it could have just been a separate package. They could have gone with the proposal in May. In fact, Nancy Pelosi had it ready to go, and we would have gotten $1,200 checks then. So this isn't a both sides problem. It's a one side problem. And Republicans better not leave Washington, and they better get Americans that money.
I can definitely see the both sides problem, the corona bus. We will see what happens with this massive thing next week, hopefully sooner rather than later for the American people. Thank you so much to both of you. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you both.
Merry
Thank
Christmas.
you. They're calling it a Christmas miracle. Why one archaeologist believes that this could be the childhood home of Jesus Christ. Nazareth was the childhood home of Jesus Christ. The researchers spent over a decade studying the remains of a dwelling that lies beneath a modern-day convent. Archaeologist Ken Dark joins us now to tell us a little bit about this pretty fascinating discovery. He is also the author of the book, The Sisters of Nazareth Convent. Ken, thank you so much for joining us on this holiday week. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, we are so delighted that you were able to be here, and these pictures are fabulous in your book. But there's a big story here. How was this discovery made? You give a lot of credit to these nuns.
Well, what happened was that I was researching the emergence of Nazareth as a Byzantine pilgrimage site. So Nazareth, how it became a place that Christians went to in the immediate post-Roman period. And as part of that, I was looking at what sort of place Nazareth was at that time. And there was a lost pilgrimage church called the Church of the Nutrition. Well, nutrition in that sense means the upbringing of Christ, and it was said to be built on the house in which Jesus was brought up. Well, I found the church. Pretty certainly we found the Byzantine Church of the Nutrition. And in its crypt, in its underground cellar, if you will, there was indeed a first century house, a place where a Jewish family lived in the first century.
And what are the clues that led you to believe this could possibly be Jesus Christ's childhood home?
Well, the church was dedicated in the Byzantine period to the childhood home of Jesus Christ. It was said to be built on the site of that. There was an earlier church there in the 4th century, so only 300 years, roughly, after the time of Jesus living in Nazareth. And that church was found in our work also. So we found the Byzantine church, we found the 4th century church, and at the same site, there is indeed a 1st century house. So it might be the childhood home of Jesus, but we can't really be sure. But we can say that that is almost certainly the house that they believed in the late Roman period and in the Byzantine period was where Jesus had been brought up.
Yes, and fascinating also, the Sisters of Nazareth began to build their convent there, and they're credited with some of the early archaeological efforts there on that site there in the late 1800s. Thank you so much, Ken Dark. We really appreciate it. It's fascinating. It's lovely to see all those pictures. Wishing you all the best in this new year, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much. Happy Christmas.
The Pope's Christmas Eve Mass did not have the usual crowds, of course, this year because of Italy's coronavirus restrictions. So how Christmas celebrations around the world are adjusting to the pandemic. Here's what he told his fans during his final broadcast of 2020.
I wasn't expected to make it to October and then to November and then to December. And yet, here I am. I can't be self-absorbed about it when that is the tendency, when you are told that you've got a due date. You have an expiration date. My point in all of this today is gratitude. My point in everything today that I share with you about this is to say thanks.
In February, President Trump awarded the 69-year-old Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom during his 2020 State of the Union. Christmas around the world will look a lot different this year because of the coronavirus pandemic. In the Vatican, Pope Francis's traditional Christmas Eve Mass, which began earlier in the hour, did not have the usual packed crowd. We have Amy Kellogg live with more from Milan. Amy.
Hi, Molly. Well, there's a lot of lockdown and loneliness this year, sadness and separation, but spiritual leaders like the Pope are doing their best to make people look beyond the negatives. He had his is having his traditional midnight mass early. There won't be people keeping him company at St. Peter's Basilica tonight, not many anyway, but he is there for his faithful. And here at the historic San Miniato Basilica and Monastery in Florence, the abbot says at least there will be a congregation this Christmas, unlike at Easter. He said the message of Christmas is more resonant than ever this year, and it is, of course, very simple.
A child is born for us. This is the message of hope and peace that we read this night in the Gospel. This is the message of Christmas. This is the message that we send for all of you from San Miniato al Monte, 1,000 years of beautiness. This is the message for the new year, a year of rebirth of hopes for all of you.
Now, the birthplace of that child, Jesus, Bethlehem, relies for much of its budget on Christmas tourists who are simply not coming this year. Even locals are locked out as the Palestinian Authority has banned people from traveling between towns. So this year is hard, but the people of Bethlehem are forging on. So many people are not able to get to Bethlehem, not even able to get home, like many of the truckers caught on the edge of the English Channel, stuck for days because France has closed the borders due to the new strain of COVID, and they may be spending the holiday in their cabs. The only one who seems to have carte blanche, however, to ignore COVID restrictions is Santa, who up here in Finland reminded his starry-eyed followers that there are more ways to stay in touch than just sitting around a table together. And of course, again, Molly, the birth of Jesus, a symbol of hope. And at San Miniato Basilica, they are saying that one of the manifestations of hope this year should be the rollout of all of these new vaccines.
Amy Kellogg, thank you so much. Nothing stops Santa. Thank you for watching. The Daily Briefing with Jillian Turner today is up next.
Major Christmas Eve drama here in the nation's capital. Lawmakers are still fighting this hour with President Trump over a COVID-19 relief bill. But it's almost Christmas, so lots of reasons to feel hopeful. I'm Jillian Turner in for Dana Perino today. It's great to be with all of you at home. This is a special edition of the Daily Briefing from lawmakers. But let's begin with Mark Meredith, who is reporting from West Palm Beach. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas to you, Jillian. Good afternoon. Right now, Congress is trying to figure out how serious the president is about his demand to increase the money that would be going out on stimulus checks once they were to go out. Earlier today, House Democrats had a chance to meet to decide whether or not this was going to get pushed through in the House. However, Republicans made it clear they were not going to support this effort, trying to raise the money from $600 to $2,000. Republicans say they want Congress to re-examine foreign aid money that's tied to a massive government funding bill that's attached to this stimulus. So right now, it's unclear if the president's going to approve this entire package or not. The president, he got here to Florida last night. He surprised so many people, though, before he left D.C. when he voiced his displeasure with this deal because it was hammered out by Congress and the Treasury Secretary, somebody that's talking to the president often. Nobody thought that the president was not going to approve this deal. And so with this still being tied to a government funding package, if this is not approved, it could mean a government shutdown next week.
This is Christmas Eve. Surely, the President of the United States, whether he's in Mar-a-Lago or any place else, ought to empathize with the pain and suffering and apprehension and deep angst that the American people are feeling this Christmas Eve and sign this bill.
Now, the president has not said he is going to veto this stimulus bill. We're all trying to read the tea leaves after a video came out Tuesday night where he made it clear he was just not happy with what was in there. So we'll have to wait to see whether or not there's any action while the president's down here in Florida. They just called a lid here, Jillian, meaning we don't expect to see the president on camera today. So that means we'll be looking at Twitter quite a bit to see if there's any updates there. Jillian, back to you and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Mark Meredith in West Palm Beach. Fox News team coverage now continues with Edward Lawrence. He is here in Washington. Hi, Ed.
Hey, Jillian. Yeah, it's a political game of chicken that's going on here in Washington, and the American people are caught in the middle of this. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has dragged her feet for months through negotiations. She turned down at the peak a $1.8 trillion stimulus package a few months ago. Now, here we are at the end of the year, the economy showing signs of slowing. In the 11th hour now, the House Speaker and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell agreed to attach the COVID relief bill to a massive omnibus spending bill. Now, this morning, the House adjourned without upping the direct payments to $2,000 as the president wanted, and Democrats made a passionate plea.
Partisan politics. Put the people first. This bill is for the people, for the country. Sign this bill, Mr. President.
Now, we did not see the same fire to pass something back in October before the election. Well, now the White House is taking a very close look and hinting there could possibly be a veto here. Now, House Speaker says that she will again bring this bill up on direct payments, upping them to $2,000 a person on Monday, this time putting votes on record. So instead of cutting spending or any of the pork, she wants to just add on top more direct spending for these payments, something Republican Brian Babin told me last night on Fox Business will simply not work.
The best stimulus package we could possibly have would be to open up this economy again and put Americans back to work. They don't want and they shouldn't have to depend on the federal government to make ends meet. And the Democrats want to keep schools and businesses closed and ensure that Americans continue to rely on government instead of their own hard work. It's about power and control.
Yeah, the political maneuvering continuing with all eyes on what the president will do. By law, he now has about 7 days left to act on the bill that's on his desk. Back to you.
It's the billion-dollar question. Ed Lawrence in Washington, thank you. All right, let's bring in Fox News contributor. He's also former White House press secretary to President George W. Bush, Ari Fleischer. Ari, thanks for taking time on Christmas Eve to join us. We appreciate it. Love to see you as always. I want to get into the politics of this with you a little bit. What is in your estimation, the strategic reason why President Trump waited until kind of the 11th hour to put his foot down about these stimulus payments? Does he think that he has a better chance of getting more money for Americans now than he did earlier? Is there some political gain to be had somewhere for him? What's your best guess here?
I don't think there's a strategic reason for it. And this wasn't even the 11th hour. It was the 13th hour. And the bill was already sent to him. And that's when he voiced this objection to it. Look, I mean, we all know that Congress is like a bunch of college students. They always wait to the last minute to write their paper and turn it in. But in this case, the teacher changed the assignment right before the paper was due, or actually after the paper was due. And we're used to messes in Washington, but I've never seen a mess as bad as this one.
Wow.
I mean, everybody looks awful in this process. There are people who are struggling, particularly unemployed, who deserve help. There are people who are working who don't deserve help, and they've messed this whole thing up.
That's quite something coming from you, Ari. The worst mess that you've seen in Washington. From the guy who spent 9/11 with President George W. Bush. Okay, so let's talk political optics, right? This puts Republicans, the president's move puts Republicans in a bit of a pickle because they're now forced to stand up and vote against more money in the wallets of millions of Americans at Christmas. Sure, a lot of them are not going to be pleased with the president's move here. Do you think it's worth the political costs for the president on his way out the door?
No, it's not. And you know, to be clear, of course, the problem with this mess is it's a predictable, negotiated mess. And you know the patterns, you know the sequence of events. And when a president wants to change legislation, he needs to instruct his negotiators to work behind the scenes before the Congress finishes its work. That's how you insist on $2,000, and you make Congress pass $2,000. You can't wait till after they finish and send it to you. It will never work that way. And so that's why I don't see any political advantage to Republicans at all. Typically what happens, Jillian, is when there is a mess like this, the party that's in charge, Republicans here, they take the heat for it because if there's a mess, you blame the people who are there, the incumbents. And in the Georgia Senate race, this puts the two Republicans there in a particularly precarious position.
So now President-elect Biden says all this billion-dollar bill is just a preview or sort of an appetizer for the mega relief that's going to come to Americans, hopefully under his administration. But what are the odds? I mean, we don't know which way Georgia's going to go yet, of course, which will determine the balance of power in the Senate. But what do you think the odds are Biden's going to actually be able to get real movement and get another round of relief to Americans sometime in the first half of next year?
I think it's highly unlikely because as more people get vaccinated, and we're over 1 million people vaccinated now, the most important thing for the economy is to open up the economy, open up businesses, and stop shutting things down. That's how you help people. You don't help people through government checks. That's a temporary measure. The real solution is to get back to the economic growth that existed pre-pandemic, which you have to give President Trump credit for. The poverty rate was the lowest since 1958 prior to the pandemic. Poor people were helped the most during the Trump years until the pandemic. So no, government spending is not the answer next year when President Biden takes over. The answer is open the economy, let people do what they want to do, go back to work.
You always make it sound so easy and have so much common sense about it. Ari Fleischer, we got to leave it there, but happy holidays to you. Thanks so much for joining us on this Christmas Eve.
Merry Christmas to you.
We look forward to talking in the new year.
Thank you.
All right, so could the ongoing investigations into Hunter Biden's foreign business deals be handed over to a special counsel? Bill Barr said no just a couple of days ago, but Fox News is now learning that high-level talks are happening at the Justice Department. As we speak, they are considering a special counsel. We've got that next. The nation could be headed to a whole new level, to an overtake by the Department of Justice, because sources tell Fox News today that talks are underway over at DOJ about whether or not to appoint a special counsel. David Spunt joins us with more from the Justice Department. Merry Christmas, David.
Jillian, Merry Christmas to you. Today is the first day without Bill Barr as the Attorney General of the United States. He's now the former Attorney General. Yesterday was his last day after almost 2 years of service here at the Department of Justice. Right now, those discussions, as you mentioned, are taking place under Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen. I do say the word discussions because there have not been any final decisions made on this matter, according to our own Brooke Singman, who works at FoxNews.com, according to her sources. Quite a different tone about this issue than when former AG Bill Barr was just here a few days ago, Jillian. He was asked about this on Monday, just 2 days before leaving office. He says he did not see a need to appoint a special counsel to investigate the incoming president's son. Listen here.
And to this point, I have not seen a reason to appoint a special counsel, and I have no plan to do so before I leave.
And he didn't do it. So Barr passed on the special counsel opportunity. Now it's up to Acting AG Jeff Rosen to give either the special counsel idea a thumbs up or a thumbs down. He has just a few weeks to do so if he chooses. Jillian, the clock, of course, is ticking. January 20th, that's when Joe Biden becomes the 46th president of the United States. He has yet to name an attorney general, but some of the people on his list, we're hearing Sally Yates, former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, also former, or actually current outgoing Alabama Senator Doug Jones. And this is something that could, if a special counsel, according to the statute, comes in play, Jillian, that means that it would be protected from the attorney general. That's why many Republicans calling for this special counsel. They see it as a conflict of interest. Jillian.
Well, the president-elect's going to have to whittle down that list real fast. Thanks for breaking it down, David.
You bet.
All right, let's bring in Brett Tolman. He's a former federal prosecutor. Merry Christmas to you, Brett. Thanks for taking time out of your day today to join us. We appreciate it, as always. I want to get to you.
Hi, Jillian. Merry Christmas to you, too.
Thank you. So 2 days ago now, Bill Barr, when he was still the Attorney General, said DOJ sees no reason for a special counsel to be appointed to look at Hunter Biden. Now, 2 days later, Fox News is hearing from DOJ sources that, in fact, they are considering this as an option. So I'm looking at this, right? As far as I can see, the only thing that's changed in the last 48 hours is that Barr is now no longer the Attorney General.
Yeah, the Attorney General, Bill Barr, I think he served well, and he was an important part of the president's cabinet at a very difficult time. But I think he's very old school. I think he felt that having multiple U.S. attorneys already looking into it, that was, regular order. But having said that, it wouldn't surprise me if these discussions have been going on for some time, knowing that AG Barr was leaving, because there are some factors that do justify taking a real close look and possibly appointing a special prosecutor.
So is there any sense in which Biden having the Attorney General or the Attorney General for Biden deciding on his own to appoint a special counsel could be actually helpful to President-elect Biden and his entire administration? Because if you think about it, right, this would take, maybe I'm asking, some of the political pressure off. It would take some of this ammo that his opponents have to use against him about how he's entering office with a conflict of interest. Handing all of this off to a special prosecutor would be an opportunity for Biden to say, look, I'm not touching this thing. I have nothing to do with it. I have no purview. I have no say here whatsoever.
Yeah, I think you hit on a point that I've conveyed, and I think others have conveyed as well. If I'm President-elect Biden and I want to be able to mend fences among individuals across this country, there are two issues that I think he should be taking a different approach to. And one is to indicate very strongly that he wants the investigation to go forward. He'll appoint a special prosecutor, or he'll leave a special prosecutor in place to do a thorough review, that he believes in his son, but that he also believes in justice. And on the other issue, the election, and satisfying others that the machines are looked at and other things are looked at, allegations are either proven or they are refuted. And that would give him strength going into his administration.
Brett, take a listen to Alyssa Farah. She's President Trump's former White House communications director, on our air this morning. I want to get your response.
The fact that these different scandals did not come to light ahead of the election, frankly, was a disservice to the American public, who wasn't able to fully vote with an informed perspective about the different conflicts of interest that Hunter Biden, the incoming president's son, has.
I guess in a nutshell, do you agree with that?
So there was a time that I did not agree with that, and that was prior to that point where we had 50 former intelligence officers from the intelligence community indicating that this information or the allegations against Hunter Biden was just simply Russian disinformation. At that point, I agree. I think AG Barr needed and was obligated to inform the American people that this was not Russian disinformation, that there were active investigations, and they were looking at it, and they were credible.
Well, it's good to hear that perspective. Brett, thanks so much for joining us on this Christmas Eve. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Thanks, Jillian.
You bet. Coming up next, a house explodes. It left a toddler and her mother trapped under mounds of rubble. Neighbors jumped in to help. This body cam video shows a neighbor jumping into action to rescue a mother and her toddler in Indiana. They were both trapped under rubble after their house exploded. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is in Los Angeles with the details. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Jillian, this is extraordinary footage captured by the body camera worn by Police Lieutenant Kevin Van Clee, who was awarded the Medal of Honor by his department for his action after a natural gas explosion leveled a house in Porter County, Indiana in September. Lieutenant Van Clee heard about the call about the explosion via his police scanner, and this is what he found when he got there. Flames engulfing part of the home, the entire structure already collapsed, and the family who lived there desperately trying to get to those trapped in the debris. Among them, a young girl. Lieutenant Van Clee ran directly to the area where the child was trapped. Look at this.
Hold that, okay? Here, baby. I got you, baby. Hold it, buddy. Hold it. Hey, hold it. Hey, baby. Hey, baby. We're going. We're going. We're going. We're going. Here, go. Go, go. Go, come with me.
Van Clee then ran to another part of the house where a woman was believed to be trapped under part of the roof that had collapsed. He shouted all hands on deck as he and other police officers and firefighters lifted the roof, giving the woman space to crawl out. 7 people were injured in the explosion, but no one died, in large part, according to officials, because of the actions of Van Clee and other first responders on scene. Van Clee said at his Medal of Honor ceremony that, quote, "It was nothing short of a miracle that we were close by." A great example, Gillian, of the kind of heroic work that police officers and firefighters perform on our behalf every day. Merry Christmas to them and to you, Gillian.
That was very hard to watch, but thank you, Jonathan. All's well that ends well, I suppose. Merry Christmas to you as well.
Thank you.
Church in California has lost its fight now to hold indoor Christmas services. A federal court ruled that Governor Newsom's shutdown order is a lawful public health measure. Christina Coleman is in Los Angeles with the details. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Jillian. Well, a California church lost a court battle against the state's lockdown orders again. The church's attorneys say they were seeking immediate action so that their members could worship on Christmas Day. But in a 2-1 decision, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected the Harvest Rock Church of Pasadena's request for a temporary restraining order against the state's restrictions. The church's leaders claim the worship-related lockdown orders violate their First Amendment rights. They also say Governor Gavin Newsom's restrictions criminalizes in-person worship and chanting during worship service, while state leaders encourage social justice protesters to both gather and chant. Now, despite their argument, the court ruled the church failed to prove the COVID restrictions were infringing on the First Amendment rights of worshipers. Now, this comes as churches across the country challenge various COVID lockdowns and restrictions in court. Earlier this month, the U.S. Supreme Court stopped New York from enforcing certain limits on attendance at churches and synagogues in areas hard hit by COVID. That ruling essentially referred to a health order that treated churches the same way as comparable businesses. Also, the Catholic Archdiocese of Washington and the mayor of D.C. reached a deal on Tuesday that eases attendance limits for worship services. An attorney for the Archdiocese referred to it as a Christmas truce. Jillian?
Wow. Well, Merry Christmas to you, Christina Coleman. We appreciate it.
Happy holidays.
So the couple who claimed that their 6-year-old was floating away in a homemade helium balloon has now been pardoned. Colorado's governor is issuing pardons to the parents responsible for the infamous balloon boy hoax. 11 years ago, the country was captivated by live footage of what they thought was a little boy floating far above the ground. Emergency responders and even 2 National Guard choppers scrambled to save his life. It then turned out that the boy wasn't in the balloon. He was home all along. So officials then accused the parents of staging this entire thing as a publicity stunt. They were convicted and did serve time, but as recently as last year, they were claiming it wasn't a hoax, and they really did believe their son was inside the balloon when they called for help. Complicated story. Well, health officials are warning against traveling this holiday season, but Americans are taking to the skies in droves. That's next. Plus,